Welcome to the Piece of Me podcast. This is your space for all things peace, positivity, and finding balance to live your best life. Life gets busy, and at times it's messy. I'm here to help you clean things up and put peace back in its place. I'll share tips, ideas, interviews, mindset shifts, and fresh perspectives to help you along the way. If you missed your chance to win a coffee on me during Free Coffee Fridays, well, you're in luck. I still have a discount code for you. The Piece of Me podcast partnered with Java Sock to give a handful of listeners an iced coffee Java Sock and a free cup on me. I drink iced coffee year-round and just rotate the coffee creamer flavors to keep it festive and fun. If you didn't win the contest, you can still score a 10% off discount by using my code LEXY82172. I'll put this code in the show notes of this episode below so you too can keep your cup cozy through the season. Hi friends, it's Lexy Leigh. If you're new here, welcome. And if you are not new, then welcome back and thanks for coming back to the podcast. Please do me a quick favor and hit the follow button on the top of your podcast page because it's a great way to support the show and let me know that you're listening. And if you'd like to be a guest on this podcast, please contact me through my website at pieceofmepodcast.com. That's pieceofmepodcast.com. Now, last week, I decided to have some fun on the podcast and change it up a little bit. It's October, and Halloween is here. Marc, our demonologist and 13-year ghost hunter, joined me to share his stories of talking to the dead. Now, we had a lot of fun talking about signs from loved ones, dreams, and also the ghosts of Gettysburg. But what you're about to listen to is the second part of our conversation. I asked him about Ouija boards, if anything has ever followed him home, and if those copper wires that move really give answers. He also talked about how science and ghost findings are not on the same page. Now, if you haven't already listened to part 1, go back and listen to last week's episode first so you don't miss a thing. Trick or treat, let's take a listen. Well, you said something that I wasn't expecting because you said, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Whereas I could think, somebody is probably so hopeful in wanting to hear from somebody, from a loved one on the other side. And if they start to get signs or voices or whatever coming through, they're probably like, oh my gosh, it's working. So how would they know I guess, what's the line? Like, how would you know if no, there's something evil behind this versus I don't know if you have any stories or examples, but where it's maybe it is a loved one and they're just being really clear versus, no, this is not a good situation.
Yeah. So I'll give you an example. It won't make sense to everybody, but this is many years ago. I was investigating a location in my hometown in Gloucester, Mass, with one member from my team, and this place was a spa / wellness center, and we were in a newer part of the building, and the woman had told us all these stories about things that happened, stuff going missing, noises, her dog being antagonized. Now, there are a couple of things that, as you do some research, you find some commonalities. For whatever reason, being near railroad tracks always seems to spark some energy. Being near running water sparks some energy. Limestone is another thing that helps, is a conduit for energy. This particular location was near some water and right along the train tracks were behind it. There was a cemetery nearby also, within a stone's throw. So for me, it was plausible that there was some activity happening. So we go there. We're in this new room. She called it the yoga room, and the floor was heated and things like that. So we were in this room, and there was the energy changed. There was a feeling in the room where, you ever walk into a room where two people have been fighting and you could feel the tense energy in the room and you're just like, ooh, I don't want to be in here right now. Mm-hmm. That's that fight or flight. That's that feeling that we get as an investigator when things change. You get that I'm uncomfortable right now. I don't feel like I should be in this spot. It's a little, my body's tingling. I shouldn't be in this area. So that's what we were going through. That's what we were feeling. And we started having a session where some investigators like to use a flashlight. If you watch the TV shows, you'll see they use a flashlight because they believe that it's easier for a spirit to use its energy to make the light come on and off than it would be for them to maybe speak sometimes. So it's just a little mag light where you just loosen it enough so that it's not completely disconnected, but so that you're not going to be able to easily turn it on either. And sometimes the flashlight comes on, sometimes it goes off. The problem is that with science, as things heat up, they expand. As things get cold, they contract. So if the temperature in the room starts to expand to that coil in the flashlight, it's going to make contact with the battery, and the battery's going to light up. And then if it starts to cool down for whatever reason, it's going to contract, the light will go off. So this is a theory that likes to throw the flashlight session out the window. My investigator at the time liked using that, so I let him kind of go with it, see where we could go. And he started getting communication back and forth. It seemed to be validating his answers with the light coming on at request. Now, he started asking some very personal questions because he believed this whatever was there was connected to him for some reason. As those personal questions came forth and the light kept coming on and off, he started to become more emotional. He started getting much more vivid and valid interaction with the light, where the light would really come on very bright and then snap right off for him, and then come on and then snap off. So now I'm looking at it going, okay, this is not science at work here. This is something manipulating the light because it's far too quick, and it's happening in an unpredictable pattern where it's right on command with what he's asking. So as he's asking these questions, now he starts to cry because it's got very emotional for him. I walked over to him and I said, I need you to do me a favor. I said, you've done nothing wrong. Now I'm just observing from afar, and this is part of the reason that this is part of the reason I got into demonology and things like that. I watched from afar, and I'm watching all this happening, and I'm picking up on, like, to me, my BS meter is going off now. This is not a good spirit. It's manipulating him. It's actually, through answering his questions, making him ask more emotional questions. So he's becoming extremely vulnerable and open. And I said to him, you've done nothing wrong. You're not in trouble. I just need you to go. He's like, what? I said, I just need you to go outside, get out of the building, go just take a breath until I come get you. Just stay outside. I said, I want you to drink some water. I want you to clear your head. I need you to focus and reground yourself. I'll tell you afterwards. So he was very confused, but I got him to leave the building. And when I did that and I turned around, and it's funny because I felt like an actual investigator where I'm saying, so, I know you are who you, or you're not who you say you are, or who, and blah, blah, blah. Now all the communication stops. The flashlight is not going off anymore. So I walked over, I said, well, you don't want to use it? I'm taking it away. And I took the flashlight right away. I shut it off. And I said, now, if you want to impress me, you're going to have to do something different. Like, you're going to have to close a door. You're going to have to, expound some kind of energy because I know who you are. I know you're not blah, blah, blah. Because I don't want to get into it because it was very emotional and very personal for him. But we both, myself and the business owner, because she was there, we audibly heard thumping on the floor. Like something was stomping away, like it was angry that we just, go to your room sort of thing. And then the room kind of the energy changed in the room. And we moved to a different part of the building, and now we could feel it in a different part of the building. And we were almost able to follow this energy around the building to the different spots until we made it so uncomfortable that it just, we were able to kind of push it out of the building, if you will, because it had been exposed. And this is one of those, if it feels too good to be true moments that you have to pay attention to, because for him, he thought he was communicating with somebody that was a person who had passed in his life, and he wasn't. It was something else. And thankfully, I was there to recognize the situation from the outside and be like, This is far too good to be true. This is definitely not going down. And I was right. And it's moments like that where if you're going to dabble or you're going to try and figure these things out, there is a blueprint for how you should really investigate. It's kind of like we call it the 3 pillars. It's the scientist, the medium, and the skeptic. Is kind of what you want to have. You want to have that mind that's out there going, now I'm a skeptical believer myself. I have to experience it to believe it, but I'm also, my BS meter is there enough to know that if I'm not fully on board, then there's a reason I'm not fully on board here. So these are the things that we have to caution. I will go back to where I talked about that child spirit in that building that I was in before. And the reason that I know sometimes an evil spirit or entity will mask itself as a child spirit, because everybody finds children loving, and everybody wants to be like, oh my gosh, this poor child, and that's how they trick us. That I know for a fact was a child, because there was another dominant male entity that would come into that area and she would disappear. So he would scare her away. So there was something in that building that was dark and negative, that whenever it would show up, that child spirit would take off. And that's how I know in that scenario we were interacting with 2 separate entities at that time. So I don't know if that really answered the question, but
it does. And you mentioned something else too. You said, kind of gently touched on it, and you said you want to get too much into it and you don't have to, but the demonologist part of this, was that like a demon energy? Is that a demon? Like what is a demonologist?
Yep. So basically a demonologist is, it's a broad brush if for a name. The word demon is in there, and it's in there because, yes, I do deal with demonic cases. I do deal with potential demonic cases. Basically, any dark or negative case is what I will specialize in. And the reason it's painted with such a broad brush is because there are so many things out there right now that are not demonic. Less than 1% of the actual cases that you get called in on would be potentially demonic. It doesn't just happen. You don't just suddenly have a demon in your house. There has to be a deal. There has to be an invitation. There has to be something that conjured it, or something. Like, they don't just show up and like, jazz hands, I'm here, I'm a demon, woo, I'm going to ruin your life. There's got to be a reason it's there. There are many other levels to this where people can use, I guess, energy, or it's hard. It's a little hard to explain because I'm trying to keep it so that it's at a level where everybody will understand it. You hear about hoodoo, you hear about voodoo, you hear about witchcraft, things like that. Those are all a little bit above the pay grade of the normal paranormal investigator. Like people going in to try and find a grandma, again, being upset about something not being displayed properly in the house and making a little bit of noise, or maybe moving some things, are not going to be able to know what to do when somebody's having a full-blown spiritual attack, or a poltergeist energy might be in a home and things are flying around the room and doors are opening and closing and there's just chaos. That is something that when there's, I guess let's just call it chaos for now. When there is chaos.
Can I stop you for a second? Because like as you were talking, our audio stopped.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm reading into this, but our audio was like great the whole time until you just started talking about that. So for like 10 seconds, there was nothing, just so you know. And I'm not going to edit that out because I feel like it's par for course with this conversation. The last thing I heard you say was poltergeist. And I'm thinking The Exorcist too. You know what I mean? With the head spinning and everything.
Yep. So this stuff, Exorcist obviously was a little bit of a dramatization, but I mean, there's a lot of real stuff in that movie that does happen on demonic cases like that. The smells, the vomiting, the things, levitations, things like that. Those can all really happen. the superhuman strength that happens too. This is when people go, how can you tell the difference between mental illness and a demonic haunting? And mental illness, although it's nothing to joke about, is going to level off a little bit, and you're not going to see the peripheral stuff that you will see in a demonic type haunting, where there's not going to necessarily be superhuman strength. Yes, we all have a rush of adrenaline, but you're not going to be able to throw 3 men off of you. You're not going to be able to throw them across the room. You might be able to shove one over here, but not physically toss them across the room. You're not going to have, things exploding or things over here falling down and causing a distract. That's a lot of that stuff that happens on the outside is a distraction. Because once you're distracted, you're breaking your pattern. You're breaking away from the cause, why you're there. So when I was talking about, like poltergeist activity happening in a house, that's one thing, and a normal investigator is not going to know what to do with poltergeist activity. The next level of that is where I come in. That's where my job is to come in and document and try and help with situations like that. Witchcraft is another one. We can all joke about watching the Sanderson sisters on TV and Salem, witches. No, spellcasting is a real thing, and I don't care if people think I sound crazy. It's a real thing out there. Pagans have been doing it since the dawn of time. They've worshipped the sun. They've worshipped for a bountiful harvest. They've worshipped for rain. And for whatever reason, sometimes it works, and it's very much again sort of like reciprocity. You get back what you put out. You want this. If you want it hard enough, you're going to get it. Whether you find a way to subconsciously do it or not, you're going to get something back.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these things today, there are so many people that I've come across or just encountered who have no idea who I am or what I do. But I can immediately pick up on them knowing that they dabble in something. And there's always, it's strange because I don't want to say there's like a light missing on some people, but like you can look at some people and just be like, there's something up with that person. And 9 times out of 10, I'm right. And it's like, I can't tell you how many times someone's been talking to me and I look at them and I'm like, you dabble in witchcraft? And they're like, how do you know? I'm like, I don't know, just call it a lucky guess. But there's little hints, at the way that they talk or things that they do or mannerisms that sort of tip it off and give it away. And there's too many people out there today that think that they're dabbling in something that are causing real trouble and harm to people. And it might be nice and easy for one person, but there's havoc being created out there that people will just chalk up to bad luck all the time. And I have, if anybody has looked at my Facebook page, I've over the last several months just been kind of in a depressed state. Mentally, I'm okay. I'm out there, but I've had some bad stuff. And when I sit there and I think about all of it, and I realize that the last 3 years of my life have been extremely difficult, and I've started to change my pattern because now I'm looking at it from a different light. Where because of what I do think that there's something that is impacting me and influencing me. So I did have to do a little bit of a pattern change in my life. And this is something that I think we all need to kind of do instead of just falling down the rabbit hole and just accepting that, oh, this sucks. Oh, that sucks. Oh, just one more thing on top of another thing. Break the pattern. I told a friend, and I took my own advice, and this is literally what I started doing. When you start to feel down like that, play some fun music. Change your mind. Get like, dance, sing, open the windows, do something fun. Talk to somebody, watch a funny show, whatever. Just break it, just break that pattern and make yourself get happy. And it'll slowly, take over and push anything negative out of your life. So knowing to do stuff like that, I think, is something that a lot of us just go, oh, whatever. He's just talking about stuff because it's, yeah, of course, if you start to get excited, it's going to make you feel better. Yeah, it's going to make you feel better. It's going to make your life feel better. We all have bad crap. We all have good crap. If you focus on the bad crap, then your life's full of bad crap. If you try to move away from it, now all of a sudden, there's a lot of good things that you're missing out on because you were focusing on the bad crap.
Mm-hmm.
So if stuff starts to happen and you're in a house and you're like, oh my God, maybe you're listening right now and you're thinking, this just keeps happening and I don't know, I guess maybe I'm going crazy or no, change it up. Play some fun music, I might lose power here. My lights just flashed.
Mine just did
I
too.
hope it's the power.
No, mine just
Yours did too?
Yeah, that's why I turned.
Same.
Nobody can see us. They can only hear the
here.
audio, but mine did the same at the same time as yours. This is freaking me out.
Anyway, so yeah, just be happy and, but getting back to the paranormal side of everything,
mm-hmm.
going into those types of cases, like people joke around and they're like, oh, you can do exorcism, you can do things like that. And I'm like, no, I can't do an exorcism. A religious person has to do that. Can I be involved in it? Yes. I'm kind of like the foot soldier and other demonologists, not just me, other demonologists. A true demonologist works together with the church or a rabbi or whatever, and you are the foot soldier that's going to go in and capture and gather evidence and bring it back and say, here, this is what happened. You can now determine whether they need an exorcism or, some mental guidance. And these are things that's sort of like the last line. I don't want to say you can't, but if you call a priest in a church and say, I think this is happening, can you come bless my house? They'll come bless your house. You can say, I think I need an exorcism. They're going to say, let me get somebody out there. And they're going to send somebody like me to go and check it out first before the church even gets involved. Or if you're religious like that. So, but that's what demonology is. And the reason I got into it was because I started off by wanting to be able to protect my team in case anything like that ever happened. Yes, I knew lots of people I could make a call to, but sometimes a phone call's not good enough. So I wanted to be able to do that. That is not why John, my mentor, agreed to take me under his wing. John, he took me under his wing because of the communications with his uncle, and it became clearer to me with my relationship with him that's why I was receiving more communication than maybe some other people, and getting more information that was more important than other people were. And it was because that I'm the right person to take that next step. And I believe that he's right. And one of the first things he told me when I did it was, it can be a lonely life. And I'm starting to realize that. So it's, there's things I can talk about. There's things I can't talk about. And there are many things in between that people just have no idea about. And if I sat here and you didn't have a show to record it on so people could tap in and listen that are curious about it, people would be like, this guy is freaking weird. Stuff is happening.
I'm glad.
It's crazy stuff.
Well, I'm already thinking, we're going to have you back because there's like so much I haven't even asked you that I'm curious about. Like I have like 1,000 more questions. So, okay, I have a few more questions for you. And if you can try and give us like a yes or no answer, or as close to as you can. So when people hear this episode, it's going to be around Halloween. And you talked about kind of protecting yourself and how you can certainly open up the wrong door to different energies. This is a time where people might want to pull out the Ouija board and have some fun. So in your opinion, is that dangerous? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Question 2. Has any energy ever followed you home?
Yes, it has.
Ooh,
yes.
Okay. And then this is a part B to that. How long did it stay around you for?
The worst one was 1.5 years. And that was when I talked about going down the rabbit hole of bad after bad after bad, I had lost my job. I had lost like friends. I basically had lost everything but my relationship at that time. And I was not sleeping at night either. I had a bad shoulder injury where my doctor told me I had a partially torn rotator cuff in my right shoulder, which is my throwing arm. I would wake up 20, 30 times a night. Just whenever I'd go to move my body, my shoulder would wake me up. I was not getting sleep. It was just awful. And I was very exhausted. And I finally, my girlfriend at the time, her mother said, "Do you ever think all this is going on because of what you do?" And this was when I was just an investigator. I wasn't even a demonologist yet. And I said, now that you said it, I didn't want to think that, but maybe it is. And I went to somebody that at the time was a friend, but not, we are extremely close now. And when I went to him, he brought me into this hotel room that we were at because we were at an event together. He did something. I'm not going to go into his full technique, but he works with his girlfriend, who is a very good psychic medium, and she knows about Reiki and things like that. And I'm sitting in there, and I told him about all the bad things, but I didn't tell him about my shoulder. My shoulder, I had an answer from my doctor: surgery or just ibuprofen. That was my answer. So I'm sitting there, and she's behind me, and she says, "What's going on with your right shoulder?" I said, "How do you know about that?" She said to me, "There's a hole in your chakra, and this is how this has attached itself to you, and it's causing you injury and pain." And I said, "I didn't tell you guys about that." And I explained to her what happened. They told me some things to do, nothing like exercise or anything, just spiritually some things to do. I followed exactly what they told me. 2 weeks later, I got a job. And I'm telling you, I was missing jobs that I should have been a shoo-in for. 2 weeks later, I got a job. Within that 2 weeks, I was also sleeping again regularly. And less than a month later, I was throwing a football around again. And my whole life from there just took off. Like, I went on this trajectory where nothing but good things started happening for me. And I became an extreme believer at that point in time in Reiki and mediumship and all kinds of stuff. And that was one of those spots where I have never let myself be that open again. And I've made sure that I do protect myself on a daily basis. Being a demonologist now, truly, like, daily, several times a day sometimes, I'm doing something to protect myself. It's a daily thing that I have to stay on. So I have things in my bedroom. I have rosary beads hanging from my wall in my bedroom that are blessed, and I have water in them from the River Jordan, and I have like all these different things that are just around here that I use to protect myself. So just that's my belief, so that's why it works for me.
Sure. So let me ask you this now. I've seen this on TikTok, and don't get me started on TikTok, but I have seen people with these, like, they look like copper, like pipes, tubing. I forget what they're called. They hold enough. If no one's ever seen this, the person that does this will hold one rod in each hand with like a closed fist around the base of the rod. The rods are shaped like an L. So each rod is like an L, and they'll hold them still. They don't move their hands, but they'll ask a question. And then based on they'll say to like the spirit world, okay, close the rods for yes, or open them for no, or whatever it might be. And they'll ask a question. And I'm watching this and I'm seeing the rods move and their hands aren't moving. So it's like, wow. So my question to you, is that a real thing? Do those things work?
They do. So those are dowsing rods, and or divining rods, people might call them too. But the dowsing rods originally came about because prospectors or whoever it might have been thought that they could find water using these dowsing rods because they'd be attracted to water, and through whoever decided to implement it into paranormal, it definitely, I've seen them work. I have not tried them myself. I have a problem with using my body as a conduit because if you're holding those, you're using your own energy to allow something to manipulate something in your hands. Same thing with the Ouija board, because you mentioned that before. You're using your body to allow something to move your hands around and manipulate something that you're doing that with. I would be remiss in saying that when you asked a question about the Ouija board, do I think it could be dangerous? Yes. I also think it could be dangerous when using a digital recorder, because I'm asking the same questions on a recorder that I would ask on a Ouija board. It's just on the Ouija board, I visually see it, and it's manipulating it. In here, it's just words coming in. So I think any kind, right now, especially because the veil is thinning, that's the barrier, if you will, between us and the spirit world. It's coming to a point where they believe it's at its thinnest on Halloween, and then we start to move away from that again as we go beyond. So this time of year, everything's haunted. Everybody thinks their house is haunted. That's why I typically this time of year I don't do investigations, because everybody's just looking like, oh, this is happening, and then all of a sudden, but another doesn't happen any other time of year. Well, you're also asking, like, we all celebrate the fact that ghosts exists on Halloween. We're like, yep, this is the one time a year where everybody believes. Okay, so that's there's like we call it a collective consciousness, if you will, that focuses on it.
So 2 more questions for you then. I know we started talking about ghosts, then we started talking about like more energies, I guess, but ghosts or energies, you mentioned earlier too, trying to pick up the EVP, like the voices, the recording. I have heard the same thing, like you mentioned, the flashlight, and how like sometimes it's easier for them to come through via electronics. So the question to you is that true, where if you're trying to pick up a signal, I guess, or some sign or some kind of communication, is it true that it usually comes through or it's easier to come through in electronics than it is through voice?
Yes, it is easier to come through, mainly because if you go back again to when they first started capturing recordings, we believe that there's an easier path for them to vocally communicate using white noise. So any kind of static noise, or old. Now today's radios are all high definition. Everything is so buffered down and flattened out. You're not going to get stuff like that. But the old radios that just had all that static in the airway, which was literally just verga in the air between the signal and your receiver, caused all this extra noise, like on an AM radio or something like that. People would hear voices on their radio. So it wasn't just people getting a recorder out, or the box that makes all the noise that you can get voices through. These were actual radios that people had, and this is how this all came about, where people started hearing voices within their radios saying, like, why am I getting this voice? And we believe that the static, the white noise, if you will, in the frequency of the radio, or the communication of the radio speakers, whatever it might be, helps allow them to, I guess, manipulate it to use their voice.
Okay, that's interesting.
Again, if you go back to science, if I go back to science now, a scientist is going to tell me without vocal cords, I can't make a sound like that. I cannot create words. I cannot project a voice. So if there's nothing here with vocal cords, you can't talk to me. So this defies science again, where if there's no way for it to create that, hearing a noise, well, if there's no fist there to punch the wall, how do I hear a knocking sound on the wall? Because that object has to impact the wall for the sound waves to travel for me to hear it. So how does it happen if this doesn't exist? There's no fist there to hit that wall. So this is why science looks at us and goes, you're crazy, that can't happen.
Interesting. So, and like I said, we're going to have you come back. But so final question.
Yes.
I'm sure there's a lot of people that are like, there's so many more questions here. Final question for you. And I'm sure it's hard to kind of narrow this down just to one example. But if you can think about like your wildest paranormal experience, or wildest like ghost hunting experience, or anything you could kind of share with us of kind of, and again, I'm sure there's more than one, but can you tell us about a time where it just, crazy experience that you had?
I have many. I can tell you about trying to keep it fairly brief too, but all right. So I'll tell you about this. I have one that's super intense that would be for another show. So this one was down in Gettysburg. I've been to Gettysburg a bunch of times. I believe there are locations that have activity, yes, because of things that happen there, but the fact that we all go there and keep focusing on that, I think creates almost like a psychic bubble. Like Salem, Mass. You go to Salem, everybody goes there because of the witch trials. Never mind the fact that Salem was almost the capital of Massachusetts because it had the deepest harbor, but there's other reasons that Salem was very popular. But we all know today that's where the witch trials happened. That's Salem's stigma, is to hold on to that. So I've received a lot of, the reason I started thinking about this was during an investigation in Salem, we weren't asking questions about the witch trials. We were talking about something completely different, and I started getting responses and things back about Bridget Bishop and Tituba and things that had to do with the witch trials. And I'm like, we're not talking about that right now. Why am I getting these answers? I'm like, this has nothing to do with what we're talking about. And then I started thinking, is it that we just focus so heavily on that that's all we're going to get? That we're going to miss a whole other opportunity to find out about more things in history because of the fact that everybody there focuses on Bridget Bishop and the witch trials and this and that, and that's all we're going to get evidence of. So I think about Gettysburg and what happened down there. And in 3 days in Gettysburg, almost 50,000 men and boys either died, were wounded, or went missing. 50,000 in 3 days, and they were all Americans. They were all Americans. And if you've never visited Gettysburg, get down there, do it, because it's a huge history lesson. I think we all need to pay attention to it so we don't ever do it again, because we came close, and we don't ever need to do it again. But when I went there the first time, and I remember driving through downtown Gettysburg, and then all of a sudden you come to the battlefield, and it's just wide open. There's wide open fields for miles. And I look at it and I go, there's no cover. There's no way any of the people coming from the south fighting against the north could have thought that they were going to possibly survive. You had to be thinking, I'm just going to try and kill as many of them before I die. It's just completely wide open. And that really got me when I saw that, because I'm like, there was nowhere to hide. There was just nowhere to go. And then they would camp out in the open and then start fighting again the next day. And it just, I can't imagine what they went through. So being down in Gettysburg, we had just got done investigating at this location, the Jenny Wade house. And then we left the Jenny Wade house. It was late at night. I'm driving down this road. I was staying at a farmhouse, maybe about a mile away, a little over a mile away. So when I didn't know the area that well, but I'm pretty good with direction. I always plant these little breadcrumbs in my head of like landmarks when I drive somewhere. So I'm driving along this road, and in my head I go, okay, I'm going to see the flashing yellow light. Then right after that, there's a barbecue place. Then after the trees, I'm staying there. So it's nighttime. I'll know where I am. As I come up and I see the flashing yellow light, it was myself, my girlfriend. I think there was one other person in our car, and then there was a car following us. And I remember, because I remember this part, and then I'll explain what happens after this. At the moment I saw the flashing yellow light, I heard 3 knocks inside of my car. And at the time, I thought nothing of it. But it was like, there's the flashing light. I hear, that's me knocking. I hear 3 knocks. And I was just like, that was odd. The next thing I remember is I'm on the highway, which I had to drive several minutes out of the way to get onto the highway from where I was. And I'm looking and I'm like, I looked at my girlfriend. I said, when did we get on the highway? She's like, I have no idea. And I'm like, and I'm the person in the back seat, they're like, what's going on? I said, I have no idea. Why are we on the highway? I'm like, now I have to drive, and the car behind me is calling me, and they're like, what are we doing? Why are we on the highway? I said, I don't know. I'm like, why didn't you guys just stop at the house? They're like, I don't remember passing the house. So now I have to drive 6 miles out of the way to turn around and come back. So we're laughing, but I'm thinking, like, I don't remember getting here. So I've lost about 5 minutes of time and have no clue from the moment that I saw that flashing light and heard the knocks to why we're on the highway now. Come back, get to the house. We come in, and it's just 2 people at the house. It's my mentor and this woman, Jen. And they're like, you guys won't believe what just happened. I'm like, you're not going to believe what just happened. She's like, no, let me tell you what happened. She's like, we thought you guys came to the house. I was talking to John. I heard 3 knocks on the door. I opened the door. He goes, what are you doing? She goes, I thought you guys had forgot your key. I was letting you into the house, so I opened the door, and you guys weren't there. I go, get the bleep. I'm like, get the F out. I go, let me tell you what just happened to us. So I'm like, I heard the 3 knocks in my car. Now we're all freaking out. And we're just like, what the hell just happened? What did we drop off as we drove by that then decided to knock on your door at the house? I have no explanation to that. I'm getting goosebumps talking about it again. I have no explanation to this day as to what happened, where those 5 minutes went. Was I abducted by an alien? I don't know what happened. 5 minutes of my life are gone that I'll never get back. I can't remember what happened. But to have those knocks in the car and then have them have the same experience at the house, and that to me was one of the craziest stories I have no explanation for.
Did the knocks sound like they were on the dashboard? Did it sound like it was on wood and there was no wood in the car? And did everybody else in the car hear it too? Or was it just you that heard it? It sounded to me like it was in the trunk is what it sounded like. Like it came from the back of my car. And freaky.
It was very freaky because I remember going, what was that? I don't think anybody else in the car heard the knocks but myself. I don't know though, because the way it all happened when we were talking about it afterwards, obviously became part of the story was the knocks. So I don't think anybody else in the car. The other car had nothing like that happen, the one that was following us, but they also lost that 5 minutes of time too. So they could not explain. They weren't like, hey, you kept driving past the house, so I just kept following you. It was like, no, I don't know how we got to the highway either. So the 2 cars themselves we had this experience in, I don't know. I know that I heard the knocks. I remember my girlfriend did not hear the knocks. The person in the back seat, I don't recall if they had heard them or not. I don't think they did. I think it was just me in the car. And that was just again, no explanation. It made it even crazier when we got to the house and they were talking about hearing 3 knocks on the door, and it just kind of tied it all together. It's insane.
It's so weird that you talk about that because then one more time we lost you for 5 seconds. And as you guys just hang in there, it's a little weird that when you're talking paranormal activity and the person who's sharing these stories with you, just technology took them out of the call, just like that. So that will wrap it up with my guest Marc today from his investigations on ghost stuff and all the paranormal activity. So I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. I certainly enjoyed my conversation with Marc. I think we're definitely going to have him come back because there were so many questions I didn't even get to. So I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. And as always, I will talk to you in the next episode. Before you go, I need your help. If you're listening to this show on Apple Podcasts, scroll all the way down and give the Piece of Me podcast a positive rating and review. You can also support the podcast by subscribing to this show on Spotify, Apple, Pandora, or wherever you listen. To stay connected, follow the Piece of Me podcast on Instagram, TikTok, and at the website pieceofmepodcast.com.